Today I'm going to open up SketchUp and design a circle cutting jig for my new cordless DeWalt plunge router. Hi, I'm Ron Paulk and this is the Smart Woodshop. A couple of days ago I built a circle cutting jig for my router, my DeWalt cordless router, with the standard fixed base that it came with. And you saw me do that in the shop. It was quick and easy. I was able to cut a perfect hole, exactly what I was going for. And I simply mounted the router and I drilled some holes, and I used this pin that I borrowed from my circle cutting jig for my Festool jigsaw. And it worked fine, but I really want to have it more adjustable and micro adjust, something that will have a pin that I can adjust and maybe put a tape measure on there so I can set it right to the side, diameter of hole I want. Obviously, half the diameter will give me the full cut because it measures from the far edge of the router bit to the center of the pivot point. So if I were cutting a 4-inch hole diameter, I would set it at 2 inches, and that would give me 4 inches because it's going from the center. So I've got a couple of ideas about having a sliding plate with a pin on it and then a clamp further back. So I'll have to do a bar in there, and that way it can slide in under the router. Again, even though this looks short, you have to go pretty short because half the dimension again is your circle. So having the pin out past the edge of the router starts with a pretty wide hole, and I want to make this jig go down to maybe 4 inches out to maybe 12. This is going to be for smaller holes. This is what I mostly need. If I wanted to do larger ones like tabletops or big arches, then I'd probably build the same thing but a longer one with a longer tail so the pivot point could go further out. But I don't want that for my everyday stuff because I think that long tail would constantly getting in my way. So I've opened SketchUp and I've saved a file. I haven't done anything yet. We're going to start from scratch. So I have clicked on this roof down view, this rooftop view, which is what I have showing here. And in my camera view, I am in the parallel projection. So this is the non-3D. We'll go to that in just a minute. And so what I want to do is, to start with, I want to draw the base. It'll be a rectangle to start with. I'll do these cutaways afterwards. So I want to go with the width, and I've measured that. And again, this base is a little different size than the fixed base. So I'm going to go with the width, which is the same as this one, which is 112. And then I'm going to go with the length a little bit longer of 330. And then this portion of the base, this will be a little bit longer as well because the base is longer. So I'm going to start by using the rectangle tool. And I can do that by tapping the R key. The rectangle tool is right here. It's good to know these shortcuts. If you hover over any of these, they will show you the shortcut. Now, not all of them have shortcuts, but you can assign them if you find a tool you use more often. But if I hover over the rectangle, it shows me that it's an R. So I'm going to tap in the R. I'm going to click in this corner, and I'm going to draw out. It doesn't matter how far up and out I go. If I were doing a perfect square, you can see it gives you an indicator there to show you a perfect square. So it helps you, it aids you. It's got these aids that help you draw quickly. And this is going to take a lot longer because I'm talking my way through it. This really would not take that long if I were just doing it. So I'm going to draw this out. I've clicked once, I'm clicking the second time. I don't really care how big it is. If you look down on the corner here, it's showing me that I just drew 151 millimeters by 49. So the longer dimension I know is 330, comma, and then 112. And I'm going to hit enter, and it automatically assumes millimeter because that's what I've set this up for. When I'm doing complete houses, which I draw in SketchUp, or remodels or things like that, I use an architectural settings that I have. When I open the file, I choose that, and then it would be feet and inches. In this case, I'm choosing millimeter. I could do centimeter. But the neat thing about this, and I do all my woodworking now in this setup, is that I don't need to type in for millimeter. I can still draw in standard or centimeter or whatever I want. If I wanted to do a rectangle that was 4 inches by 2 inches, I could type in 4 and the inch mark, comma, and 2 in the inch mark. You can look down in that corner in the right hand corner and see this and hit enter, and that would give me a rectangle based on inches, even though I'm in the millimeter system. So I can show you these dimensions. If I click on the D for the dimension tool, I can then show you these dimensions. Now I can click, if I hit the D, now I can click on one corner and go to the other, and that shows you that dimension. But I can also, in this case, just hover over the side that I want to dimension, it turns blue, and I just drag it up. So that saves a little time. So I can go here and here, and you see that it's 112 by 330, which is what I wanted. And this one is, it's gonna, now even though I drew it in standard dimensions, because it's defaulting to millimeter, it's gonna show me my dimensioning in millimeter. I would have to go in and switch over to standard or imperial for this to show inches. So I don't need this rectangle, so I am going to draw left to right, and it'll select everything that the bounding box touched, and hit delete. Actually, I missed that one. Delete. All right, so I have the overall length and width, and I'm going to start milling this basically. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this as the bottom. We're looking down from the top, bird's eye view straight down. I'm going to treat this as if it's the bottom, and then when I'm all done, I'm going to take it and actually go in and take the model and rotate it over, flip it over to the top. But most of the work is on the bottom, so this is a little easier. And you can see that if I go to a view like this, so I can start to see the 3D. There is no 3D now because it's still a flat plane, but you can see that when I change this, I'm not actually moving the model. I'm moving the camera. Big difference. So I'm not doing anything to the model here. I'm just rotating the model around. Later on, when I want to turn this over, I'll actually show you how I will rotate the model or flip the model over in that camera space without moving the camera. So I'm going to click back to this bird's eye view, and I want to, these two holes are exactly the same as on the plunge base as it is on the fixed base. And I like that it's a nice mounting point for this because I don't need to remove the sub base. It's actually these holes here because the threaded holes are in the base and they've overcut holes in the sub base, so I can put screws right through and they'll go down and they flush. So I just found a couple of machine screws in my Smart Woodshop collection of hardware, and they fit perfectly. So with a screw gun or a screwdriver, in just a second I can attach this very quickly and easily. And again, fortunately, this one and the other one are exactly the same location. And these happen to be off the leading edge, 32 millimeters off the leading edge, and then they're 32 millimeters apart from the center. So I'm going to give myself some guides to draw to. So I'm going to hit the T key for tape measure. That's not the dimensioning tool. It looks like a tape measure. It can be confusing sometimes. All I'm going to do is hover on that line, and I'm going to drag that out. And again, it doesn't matter where I drop it. I'll just drop it, and I'm going to type in 32, enter, and that gives me at 32 millimeters. Now I want to go off of center to lay out a lot of things, so I'm going to give myself a center guideline. I'm going to click on this side line, and I want to find center. Well, the way I do that is just hover over this line, and it will give me a red dot when I'm on, a red square when I'm on the line. But when I come to the center of that line, it'll turn to a little green circle, and I'll click on there. So now I know that line is perfectly centered. And now I know these holes are 32 millimeters apart or 16 millimeters off of the center, both directions. So I'm going to come up here, type in 16, come here, same thing, and it remembered, so it dropped it right to 16, but I'm going to type that in anyway. And that gives me where these cross is where I will put those two holes. I also am going to have a hole for the router bit to go through. Now, I'm not going to drill that in the shop. What I'm going to do is after I build this, I'm going to mount the router and I'm just going to plunge the 1/4 inch bit in to make the hole right where it goes. But I want to represent it here so that we know where it is. 74 millimeters from that leading edge. So I'm just going to drag this over and type in 74. So I've got a cross, I'll draw the circle off this cross section and off of these two. Now, I'm going to go ahead and draw this at this hole at 1/4, and so I will use a fraction to show that and show you how I can do this in this case. But before I do that, what I want to do, and I should have done this before I put in these guidelines, I am going to rotate this around and extrude this up to the 3/4 of an inch, or in this case 18 millimeters that I want it to be. So I'm going to click on that surface and I am going to hit the push pull and pull that up 18 millimeters. Now you can see my problem is that I had laid out all of my guidelines beforehand, so that was a mistake, and so I'm going to redo those. And to do it and make it clear, I'm going to just hit edit and delete guides, because the guides are just there as a reference. They are not part of the drawing. So again, I'm going to hit the tape measure tool. I'm going to come over, go 32, centered, 16, 16, and you can see it snaps to 16 there. That's because it's remembering the last dimension. So that's another little speed up you can do if you're doing a lot of repetition. And then 74. All right, so to cut the holes in the surface, I want to be in that surface. I'm going to hit the C key for circle. There, you can see when I tap on the letter, it highlights the tool. And this one I know is 3 millimeters, so I'm going to just draw it out, and I'm going to type in 1.5 half again. Anytime you're doing a diameter from the middle, you have to do half and 1.5. So I've got those two done. Now this one, I want it to be 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to draw that out and click, and then I'm going to type in 1/8 and put the inch number. You can look down in the corner there and see that. And I'm going to hit enter, of course. Again, half of it, because we're doubling for this, the diameter. All right, so I have those three done, and I'm going to go ahead and push that material out just as if I had drilled them. And to do that, I'm going to highlight it, hit the P key for push-pull, and all I want to do is come down and touch this bottom edge. You can actually push it further and extrude it, so it's important. It needs to stop right on that edge. It's easier to do it looking at it or touching on it rather than trying to look at it. But you can see through that hole that it's just a hole drilled all the way through. And now to speed things up, all I have to do is double click on these other two because they are exactly the same. Again, SketchUp sort of remembers previous actions to help speed things up. Back to the top-down view. I've got a piece of aluminum that is 3 millimeters thick, about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to rip a 24 millimeter wide strip, probably 4 inch long. I'm going to set up a dado for that, but I'm also going to, there's going to be two holes. There's going to be one hole with the pivot and another hole where I'm going to fabricate up a bolt that I'm going to tighten that up with. But what I'm going to use is a toilet flange bolt, a thin one, because they have that thin head, and I'm going to cap this, screw that up in there, and then I'm going to use a knob like this that's threaded all the way through with a hole, and I'll be able to tighten that down from the top side and suck this plate tight. You'll see as I develop this. And then I'm going to create a little pivot point out of most likely like a 1/4-inch piece of all thread or a short bolt. I'm going to screw that in, but first I will grind a point on it so that I'll be able to either use just the tip of the point to pivot, or if I really need to hold it down more, then I could drill a 1/4-inch hole in the center of my piece and drop it in a little bit further. I am going to create a dado that runs in this area, 24 millimeters wide, that will allow me to, with the tightening knob further away from the router and the pivot point further under, I can get the pivot point closer to the router bit, which allows me to do a little bit smaller of a hole. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just do this exactly 24 millimeters. When I set it up in the shop, I'll do some test fitting and I may make it slightly wider than that. I want it not to turn too much, but obviously I want to be able to slide it easily as well. So I'm going to hit the tape measure tool, go from the middle, and I'm going to go 12 and 12. And that gives me the width of my dado, 20 millimeters. And again, that stuff's not super critical. I may adjust that in the field. And so I'm going to take my rectangle tool. I could do this with the line tool or any number of ways, but it's a little quicker. So I've got that intersecting point, tap the R for the rectangle tool, and click once, come down here and click again. And now you can see that I've broken up that surface. And what I want to do is, I know that, that I want to push that down the 3 millimeters to make it flush, but I want to go a little bit further to give me room for the head of the flange bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little extra space. I'm making this out of 3/4 inch or 18 millimeter, so I'll have plenty of room. So push pull, and I'm just going to push this down, and I'm going to go 6. So that's twice as thick as the material that's going to slide in there. And then I need a slot in here that is going to accept the 1/4-20 bolt, which is also happens to be a 1/4 inch. And if I measured on the millimeter scale, it's about 5 millimeters. So I can go about a 5 1/4 something in there. Again, I'll perfect it in the shop. So I need lines to draw those, and I'm going to go ahead and clean things up. I'm going to hit Edit, Delete Guides, and I'm going to come in here with the tape measure tool. I'm going to hit T, come off the side. I want to find the center. Again, I'm just using these reference points. And notice it looks like I'm not centered. It looks like I'm further down than the center point. But that's where you have to be careful in drawing in 3D. You got to trust your dimensions because they're right. So I'm going to actually come a little further, 24, give myself an inch. And then I'm going to take my C key for circle, go to 3 millimeters, and I'm going to type in 3 just to be sure. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And it says 3, but I'm going to go ahead and type in 3. Rectangle tool again. And I'm going to make sure I'm right at that intersecting point. And it should be perfect. It should line up. And because I drew a rectangle over a circle, it intersected and it broke up those lines so I can get rid of the parts I don't need. P for push pull, come down. I need a guideline to show me the router base itself, 147. So I know the router is going to go to there. So you can see how this is going to slide under the router, the pin. That's why I'm making that plate 24. And then come off this side at 24. And I could do a curve here. I could do angles. I could do an angle with a curve. There's all kinds of ways you can do it. I'm just choosing to go this route for now. When I actually mount the router on this in the field, I may scribe this arch right here and on the back arch, and I may actually cut those away. But again, that's something I'll just do in the shop if I decide that I want to finesse it a little bit more. All right, so I'm back to here, and I'm taking the R key for rectangle, right on that intersection. It snaps, come up there, and then the same thing here. Buttons on my mouse, I can scroll in and out, and I also have a button so I can push and rotate. It turns into this, and I'm again rotating the camera view. I'm not actually moving the model. So I'm going to click on there. I'm going to push pull, just touch the bottom, it'll disappear, and then all I have to do is double click on the other side. Oop, mess that one up. I'm going to hit Command Z, and I'm going to double. Okay, so now it's remembering the mistake. So I'm going to have to go all the way down with this one. And so again, back to the bird's eye view, and I'm liking how that looks. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the guidelines again, edit, delete guides. I'm going to go ahead and save the file. The next thing I want to do is have a piece of material that is going to be that aluminum that's going to slide back and forth in here. And so that is going to be 24 millimeters, and it's going to be about 100 millimeters long. And I could draw it right in there, but I want to make it a separate piece. And right now this is just a bunch of surfaces and lines and arcs and all of that. I want to lock this up in a container so it can't be adjusted. So I'm going to get rid of the dimensions, everything selected, right click. I'm only going to have one of these, so I'm going to make a group. A group and a component are the same thing. It's a container. The difference is that a component then becomes an exact item that if I make a copy of it, say I'm doing pickets on a stair, and they're all exactly the same, and I want to change the height on, and I've got 30 pickets. Instead of having to do 30 pickets, I can go in because they're components, I would go in and adjust one picket, and you would see all 30 of them would stay exactly the same. A group is different. A group is a one item. So if I made a copy of this, I'd have two. There'd be two groups. If I change this one, it wouldn't change the other one. So anyway, I'm going to select group, and that's all there is to it, to making a group. If I did a component, I'd end up naming it, or at least giving the option where it's just not called component one. I'm going to grab the tape measure tool. I'm just going to grab a line here, drop it down here. Then I'm going to grab it off of that. I can also pull a guide off of a guide. So I'm going in the green direction, just going to drop, click, type in 24, and then I am going to come here, drop myself a guide, and then pull off that guide and go 100. R key for rectangle, just going to go to that intersection, come there, and you can see if you look down in this corner, it's 100 by 24. And I want to make it 3 millimeters thick. So I'm going to come over here, and I can go ahead and make it a group now. So I can just double click because it's only 2-dimension. Right click, make a group. So now I've put that in a container and that in a container, and they won't intersect unless I open them up and explode the group. Very important to do that. So come in here, I'm going to hit the P key for push pull, and I'm going to come up 3 for millimeters. I hit the tape measure tool, so it'll be centered here as well. 8 millimeters, 7 or 8. I'm going to just go 8, and I'm going to put my pivot point there, and then I am going to come in here, and this knob on this side that's going to tighten it and keep it from moving around has got to be outside of this area by a little bit, because it'll be on the other side, but I'll be tightening it down, and I can't have that knob bumping into the router, so I need it out near that end. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just going to call it 8 millimeters. I'm going to use my tap and die to thread them, and so I'll actually adjust the drill bit size based on the 1/4-20 recommended off my chart in the shop. So, but I'm going to go 1/4 right now, and so I'm in that space. I got to get in there now because that's a group. So you can see it's got this bounding box. If I opened it up, I'd hit my circle key tool, and I'm going to make it 1/4. So I'm going to type in 1/8 and the inch mark, and then I'm going to repeat. P key for push pull, come down, touch the bottom, and then all I have to do is go here and double click. Grab the move tool, which is the M key. I'm going to grab that bottom corner. I'm going to drop it right on this corner, just so that I know it's referenced to where it goes. Now it'll actually come up a little higher because the bolt on the other side will push it just a little bit. It's on the red line there. I want to keep it sliding, so I'm going to hold shift, and that locks it in the red direction. Then I can just touch this corner here and know that if I want to experiment and see how small of a hole I can cut, I can come over here knowing that the hole is going to be from the outside edge of the cutter to the center of the pivot point. So if I come over to the pivot point here, take my T key, find that point there, center, and come over here. They're on a different elevation, but it's close enough, 1 1/8". So I could cut as small as a 2 1/4, which I'll never do. I'll just use a hole saw for that, but it just gives me the range if I want to do a custom arc or something. And just move it until I see, so that's about as far as it would go. And again, if I take my dimension tool, the D key, come over here to the pivot point, click there, and then come over to the far side, just a little bit less than a 12-inch hole. So that should be plenty. I could make this longer. I could make that slot a little bit longer if I wanted to go just over 12. So adjustments can be made, and now I can once I perfect the design and build it in field and correct all the things that I'm not seeing yet, I will then be able to, just by making one of these with a longer tail, that this could slide even further, then the circle could get bigger and bigger. If I wanted to flip this over to show the top or to have the model oriented correctly, I would hit the M key for move, and then all I've got to do is come over here, and you can see I get these little, I get a little protractor, and I could just take this protractor, turn it over, and there I see the top. But I'm going to Command Z and flip it back. I'm going to just print this page, so I need dimensions so that I can build this in the shop. Because this is a group, I can't just click on that edge, it won't turn blue. I'd have to go into the group, and then I could hit the D key and click on that line and pull that out. But then the dimension is inside the group, and I don't want that. Another thing you can do for dimensioning the, if you want to know the diameter, you can just click on the circle and drag it out, and that will tell you the diameter. So I can click on this one. I'm going to spend a little more time and go through and kind of clean up these dimensions so they're a little more legible. I just wanted to show you how you can dimension things. And again, I'm using metric, but you can set this up for any measuring system that you are comfortable with. I hope you enjoyed this SketchUp video. I really encourage you, since there's a free version, to get it. It's really easy to learn, and it has no limitations. If you decide you like it, you go into the pro version, and literally I have designed many houses with it, all of my remodels, building decks, all of those things. I can draw everything in this and take it over into their companion program called Layout and dimension everything over there, and really create a nice working set of printable drawings, as well as drawings that that you can look at on an iPad or a phone. In fact, if you have any of my other plans for my workbenches or my smart woodshop, they were all done in SketchUp. And if you want to get yourself a set of those plans, you can click on the link in the description of this video down below. You go right over to thesmartwoodshop.com, click on Ron's Store, and there you can order plans, or you can use our Amazon store, where if you purchase anything there, they will give us a little piece without charging you any extra. And this is where the Amazon store is, but for some reason it's loading slow right now. So if it does load slow, it does eventually show up. If you like these videos, be sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, ring that little bell when you subscribe so you'll know when I drop a new video. Thanks for dropping into the Smart Woodshop. Stay safe and have a great day.